Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ask Dez Merrow. I'm here with Branden Barkema from EOS Worldwide. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Des.
Branden, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to EOS.
Sure. Well, where do I start, right? All kidding aside, so my journey really kind of starts with my dad, okay? My dad was a small business owner for 30 plus years. And so I got a front row seat to all of that, as you can imagine, right? The good and the bad, of course. I didn't follow directly in his footsteps per se, right? But I ended up kind of carving my own path career-wise in life, and just so happens that I worked with, for, and ran entrepreneurial businesses for the better part of about 20 years. So one of the things that I always kind of ran into in those businesses was looking for a better way for the business to run, more predictability, more consistency, more fun, let's call it that, right? The gentleman who founded EOS, who we'll talk about that more in a minute, really in his journey to create EOS got obsessed with what kind of creates a high-performing, exceptional entrepreneurial business. And I kind of found that in myself over the course of time. My lens was more so through how leadership impacts great businesses,
Okay.
right? So in 2014, I got with some friends and colleagues, and we just so happened to create and found really a leadership development firm. And to this day, I think has served over 1,500 individual leaders, if you can believe
Wow.
that or not. So that just goes kind of back to my whole journey individually with seeing my dad create a business, working in entrepreneurial businesses, seeing a need and wanting to create something myself. And just like Gino got really obsessed with what makes those businesses great, I was kind of obsessed with how leadership impacts those great businesses and how that makes them thrive, right? So fast forward to about 2020, I was working as the COO for a managed services business here in the Jacksonville area. And one of the sister companies, if you will, under our umbrella was running on this thing called EOS. I had read the book Traction, also written by Gino Wickman for those that could use that tidbit. But we had connected on that book, and they invited me to go observe them working with an implementer, which I am today, by the way. And so I got to see really what using the EOS framework in their businesses look like. I got to run alongside them and kind of help them during that implementation. And they really outperformed every single one of the businesses in our umbrella. So again, that just kind of sparked in me this whole idea of this is what the exception looks like in a good way. So fast forward to about a year and a half ago, I decided to make the full-time plunge and be an EOS implementer. So now I get to spend all of my time working with those leadership teams, helping them create these thriving businesses through the EOS framework.
Okay, fantastic. So tell us a little bit about what EOS does and how you serve those leaders so they can better serve their companies.
Sure, great segue. EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System, right? That might sound like a software to some people. I run into that a lot. It's not technically a software. It is a framework. It's a complete system of tools and principles that I use to help entrepreneurial businesses, generally the founder and their leadership teams, master these tools and principles so that they build strength in certain key components of their business. So it's really a designed framework to help them run their business a certain way so they get more of what they want from that business.
Okay.
We have three things that we usually focus on in that sense, which is to say, we help them create something called pure vision, right? Vision from the perspective, vision means a lot of things to a lot of different people, but it's simply about getting crystal clear on where you want to go with the business and how you want to get there. A lot of business owners, believe it or not, kind of have that in their mind's eye, but they've never put it to paper, so to speak. So we do that. And then we also help them get something called traction in their business, which is really taking the vision and with discipline and accountability, we use the tools and the framework to get that vision down to the ground in an executable fashion. So anywhere anybody in the business looks and goes and sees, they see the vision being executed upon, right? So everybody in the company, starting with the leadership team down to whoever on an individual team, is rowing in the same direction.
Okay.
As we go through that process, we create this thing called healthy. And healthy is just about me helping the leadership team become more cohesive, better executors, more fun-loving in a lot of ways. A lot of times that's not the case, unfortunately. So as the leadership team gets healthier, so goes the rest of the organization, as we find, right? So eventually what this kind of whole thing looks like in your company is crystal clarity around a plan, where you're going, how you're going to get there. Everybody in the business executing on that plan with accountability and discipline, and having a bunch of really healthy teams doing the work.
Okay. So would you say, in just as way of an example to kind of help me gel this in my mind, if you have a company that has multiple divisions, would each division have their own vision and execution, or is it an overall vision and then execution depends on the different types of divisions in there?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's more the latter.
Okay.
Sometimes that depends, though. So the best example is, yes, it's more centered around a single vision. With that being said, we are generally best fits. The EOS framework is generally best fits for organizations that are generally, 10 employees on the low end with some subjectivity there, all the way up to 250. So these are, kind of small and mid-sized businesses, right?
Okay.
Generally, one vision is sufficient there, right? And then to your point, right, we're using then each department to set their own priorities to help execute that vision, right? There are some instances, particularly in like franchise models, for example, right, where maybe you have a large entity that's part of a bigger entity in a certain region. You can probably think of a few dozen examples of that. It may be the case that that division, which can be looked at as its own company in some senses, right, has more of its own local vision, right, to be executed upon, but that's way more the exception.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's talk about healthcare in particular, because I deal with primarily healthcare, and I know you have a background in healthcare. How do you take that process and implement it? And I know that you do, because I have several dental offices that people that I know and places that I've helped that work with EOS. So how do you tailor that to a healthcare practice?
Yeah. Great question. So I would say the tailoring comes from the specific priorities, and again, the vision for that particular practice or company, whatever we're referring to. But our framework is industry agnostic for that reason, right? So we can work in any industry, and that's because we are using a proven set of tools and principles that the sum of the business kind of fills itself into, right? So it comes in all shapes and sizes, but if you look at a dental practice, for example, or a primary care physician's practice, right, maybe there's a single physician in there and there's 15 employees, or there's a couple of physicians in there and multiple employees, whatever the case is. They have an idea of what they want from that business, right? And so we just get to work on clearly defining that. We have a whole mechanism in which we define that. And as long as we define that, we can really get to a place where we're defining and prioritizing the right work that's going to help them realize that vision and goal.
Okay. Would you say, and this is kind of a loaded question, but would you say that identifying the vision is often the hardest part for
Yes.
people?
It's almost like I planted that question with you, but you're absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, so much of the time, really, a lot of business owners, it's not necessarily industry specific. They all struggle with this. I think there's an idea, right, and way less of a plan, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And how do you work with startups? Is there a different process for startups versus established practices or established businesses?
Yeah, we don't work with startups as much, and here's why. There are some exceptions, of course, but generally we don't, because EOS is an execution framework. Okay, so generally what happens with most startups, and I've worked for one, is there is way less clarity around two things fundamentally, which is, are we even in the right market, right? Maybe, maybe not. Startups are kind of testing that generally, right? And then number two is, are we delivering the right product or service in that market? And so because there's more cloudiness around those things, it's way less EOS is typically way less effective in those situations. But let's say it's a startup that has a known market and has a known product or service, and is just a startup because it's kind of getting financial backing from something. That's a little bit different story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there a time frame that is the sweet spot for a practice of whatever age to bring you in? Or is there a trigger that maybe something to help them identify, yes, you know what, we probably need EOS?
Yeah, also a really great question. I would say, I would kind of answer that question this way. I would say there's typically some pain points or frustrations that we see, right? And I would say, as a rule of thumb, again, using kind of that 10-person head count as a barometer for, like, are we the right size? Okay. Other barometers could be, probably $1.5 to $2 million would be the low end. As a rule of thumb, it's somewhat subjective, of course, but I think most importantly, it's the pain point, or what we call the frustrations, right? So there's generally about 5 of them that we deal with. Number one is, I don't feel like I have control of the business, right? Like, maybe it's grown to a point now where, like, it started off as kind of a lifestyle thing, and there's been a lot of success, and it's grown beyond the founder's ability to kind of have the right control in the business. We're not making the profit we would like, right? We have a bunch of, we're cycling people in and out all the time.
The revolving door.
We see that a lot in healthcare, I hate to say it.
Yeah.
We've hit a ceiling. So we've kind of evolved to this point where we've plateaued a little bit, and we're not necessarily sure how to break through that. And then the last one that I see quite often too is just they're stuck, right? Nothing's working. So they've tried a bunch of different things over the course of time, and they haven't really found a solution that's helped them take the next step with the business.
Okay, so give us, I'm going to put you on the spot, give us an example of somebody that you worked with, and what that looked like, and how that solutioned and resolved.
Yeah, okay, yeah, great. So I would say, I think it would be good for everybody to know that general implementation time frame in working with an implementer is about 2 years, give or take, right? Because we are helping the team master some foundational tools that they can use independently in the business. And then it's about rinse and repeat for a little while. Just like most things, I'm sure you kind of learn and do the same way. You've got to learn a little bit, do a little bit, learn a little bit, do a little bit, and then assess what you screwed up along the way, right? So it's kind of a sophisticated version of that. At any rate, I think a really good example is, I have a client who is a franchisee, believe it or not, and it was kind of hit the ceiling scenario for them, right? And so they had realized that, and it's a family-run franchise. They're really great people. I enjoy working with them so much. But they had realized that, their franchise and the goals that they had for their franchise weren't being realized, and they weren't totally sure why that was, right? And so in my conversations with them leading into it, they wanted to do a couple things. They wanted to get more of the people in the business focused, and again, like I said, kind of rowing everybody in the same direction. They had some profit and revenue goals that they weren't sure they could hit, because they didn't have what they thought to be enough consistency and predictability in their business, right? And so we started, I would say, probably a year ago, give or take, and they've exceeded their goals for last year by another 10% above what they had set originally. They have actually expanded, they manage properties, and they have expanded the number of properties they have managed. I think it was almost another 10% beyond the goal they had set originally. So again, I think that just speaks to having a clear idea of where you want to be, and maybe not necessarily having the mechanism in place to do that, as soon as you get that mechanism in place to be able to, get the traction, as we like to call it, they're a really, really good example of that.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because you don't often see that with a lot of I've talked to a lot of offices who've tried so many things, and the biggest missing factor is results. So it sounds like you're getting results, which is great.
Well, and I would tag onto that too. I have a client who is newer, but I've known this individual for a long time. They're a vascular practice, vascular surgery practice. And kind of their cool story is the managing physician. He's approaching retirement age. I like to joke with him that I feel like he's got a long time before he's actually going to retire. But point is that his goals for his practice have changed. I wouldn't say 180 degrees, but significantly, right? He wants to have more of a legacy impact with his business in the local community and in the vascular medical space. And so that was a really good opportunity to bring EOS in to clarify those things and to set a path forward over the next 5 to 10 years so that could be realized.
That's great. And there are a lot of doctors that are in that position, particularly with COVID and what we saw through COVID. A lot of people decided they weren't really sure that they wanted to continue on the path that they were continuing or that they were currently on, right? So because of that, a lot of people just fell out completely, just left the practices. And I think if they had maybe had a plan or at least had the framework for a plan, that we might have seen those transitions come along a lot differently.
I can't help but agree with you.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. And that's a critical time too, when doctors are considering the sunset of their practice, to have an out that makes sense, that preserves legacy, like you said, and gives you the ability to retire comfortably and not have all the worries. And a lot of doctors' biggest worries are, what's going to happen to my practice when I leave? What's going to happen to my legacy? What's going to happen to, is it just going to get run into the ground? And we all hope that it's not, but at least with that framework, it gives them some assurances to where they can actually step back and not continue on that cycle of, well, maybe I'll just keep going in to make sure everything's okay.
Yeah, you're so right. And I would just make one more comment to support your point. I think it's, unfortunately, what a lot of physicians, having worked with them for almost 20 years myself, what a lot of them I feel like kind of fall into the trap of is, this has to be a grind all the time. It lives and dies by me. And although they play a huge role in their own practices, let's not confuse that. I think the idea which I would want more of them to understand is, you can get more of what you want from the practice along the way versus it getting everything from you.
Right. Yeah, that's brilliant. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything that maybe I didn't ask you that you'd like to add? I'm sure there is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff, and I could talk about this literally all day. But I would just say that, look, if you're somebody that's watching this, regardless of the market that you're in or the industry that you're in, whatever the case is, if you're experiencing any of those pain points or frustrations in your business, there is a practical, simple framework that could help you fix those things, right? And there's almost 900 of me worldwide that would love to help folks like that. And as much as I don't want this to sound like a pitch of sorts, I just think that I would want people to know that there's people out there that can help them. And this whole thing, this entrepreneurial operating system, if you will, is about helping these businesses and their teams master it, right? So to the extent that I can help businesses do that and business owners, again, get more of what they want from their business, that help is out there.
And it's, I'm glad that you said that, because there are a lot of systems that are designed to help businesses that maybe don't market specifically, or not that you don't, but that healthcare practices don't feel can help them because they are a healthcare practice. And business is so different in healthcare than it is in a corporation or that sort of thing. So thank goodness for people like you that can,
Sure.
that have a proven system that carries across basically any type of vertical. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much,
Thanks,
Branden.
Des.
It's always good to talk to you.
Yes.
How can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you?
You can go to my website, which is going to be eosworldwide.com/Branden-Barkema, or you can call me, email me. We can provide you that information.
All right, and I'll put that information down in the comments. Thank you again for joining us. Thanks, Branden.
Thanks, Des. Pleasure.